This is Bob Oliphant from the Westford Historical Society and Museum, bringing you Episode 9 of Season 3 of the Westford Wardsman podcast. The Westford Wardsman newspaper was part of Turner's Public Spirit, a weekly newspaper in Ayer a century ago. In this episode, we'll be reading the Wardsman for the week ending Saturday, February 26, 1910. I'll elaborate on what was happening in Westford in 1910. The first section covered in this issue is the About Town section, always written by Samuel L. Taylor. Mrs. Clara Littlefield of Fitchburg, one of the old loyally remembered scholars and teachers of Stony Brook School in its Little Red Schoolhouse days, has been visiting her sister, Miss Belle Walker, and her brother, Charles E. Walker, at the old Walker homestead on Main Street, where the quiet peace of prosperity reigns. At a meeting of the Board of Registrars of Voters Friday evening of last week, dates for future meetings were arranged as follows. Friday evening, March 4th at Brookside from 7:45 to 8:45 in Moore's Mill. At Graniteville, Monday evening, March 7th, at Healy's Hall from 7:30 to 9. At Ford's Village, Wednesday evening, March 9th, from 7:30 until 9 at Abbott's Hall. The final meeting for registration prior to the annual town meeting will be held at Town Hall, Westford Center, Saturday, March 2nd, from noon until 10 o'clock p.m. Arthur G. Boynton of Lowell, having sold part of his milk route to E.B. Edmonds, it necessitates a transfer of milk raisers in Westford. Mr. Boynton will retain the raisers on the Lowell Road as far as Bannister's Corner. Those on Main Street and elsewhere will be transferred to Mr. Edmonds. Mr. Boynton is an exceptional milkman, and fortunate are the farmers who have such a one. Harold Fletcher, who has been ill at the hospital in Lowell, is home, but with the usual cautious restrictions following this class of illness. James H. O'Brien, who has been ill with pneumonia, has got round it, with cautious planning of avoiding the outdoor paths that dampened the way that led to his illness. Among others who will accompany the Good family, that's Good with an E at the end, the Good family to California and Oregon are Mrs. John M. O'Brien, Frank D., Nellie, and Agnes O'Brien. They will leave about March 15th. The next section is obituary. Reverend John Calvin Kimball, who died last week Thursday at the home of his daughter in Greenfield, has the clear and friendly remembrance of all who knew him when he was minister of our old First Parish Unitarian Church several years ago. He was in Westford at this church from 1892 to 1895. His was the courageous living of all that was best in that solid type of life that the world has long known and admired as New England. By the First Parish Church, he will be remembered as an eloquent and forcible exponent of righteousness, and for his clear and fearless expression of opinion in regard to this life and the life elsewhere. None who ever knew him could help but admire his sincerity for truth in matters of religion and his independence in matters political, as he loyally defended the principles of minorities, as did his father, but now simply because they did, but because he thought it right. He had a vigorous personality and a very reverential spirit. During the Civil War, he served as chaplain in a Massachusetts regiment, which saw active service in many frontier fights. While in Westford, the Veterans Association invited him to give the address on Memorial Day. The citizens will recall that address as the life of eloquence cannonading for human rights that could not be stopped this side of realization. The funeral services were held last Sunday afternoon, and burial was in his native town of Ipswich, beside the companion of his life, near to the resting places of his ancestors, and close by the homestead farm of his boyhood days. The next section is called Basketball, and it's spelled, basketball is spelled as two words. Westford Academy basketball team was defeated by the Stowe High School team last Saturday at Stowe by the score of 38-14. The Stowe team has been under training for some time by a college coach. This advantage was the real telling factor that led to the defeat of the Westford team, who have the usual and more than ordinary physical weight and muscle belonging to farm life, but they lacked training in its use. It must also be remembered that this is the first for several seasons the school has been represented in this branch of winter sport. The Academy team was manned by Feeney, Bannister, A. Talent, S. Talent, and Walkton. The Academy team defeated the Academy alumni team on Washington's holiday at the basketball game at the Academy Gymnasium. This was actually located on the third floor of what is now Rodenbush Community Center in quite attractive wood-paneled and very small space now used for storing supplies for the preschool. The Academy team defeated the alumni 26-14. It was a clear case of practice and out of practice. I might mention the alumni team, just give the last names: Hartford, Hildreth, Wright, Johnson, and Hamlin. The next paragraph is called Give Us Light. Representatives of the Connecticut River Power Company were in town Washington's Day with a view of lighting up our darkness in street, hall, school, mill, and private dwellings, and perhaps trolley us to Brookside. We need light on the streets of our villages for the safety of our name as a town in comparison with less wealth and population that surrounds us. We also need light to read the statistics of passenger traffic from Westford to Brookside at a time when the fare was 15 cents for 2.5 miles and 5 cents for 5 miles elsewhere by the same charge of electricity. Yes, give us light to prove figures fair and right. Yes, give us light that we can see ourselves as others don't see us. The next section is the Westford Center section. Miss Ida M. Gould is convalescing from a 2 weeks siege with grip. Grip, as you may recall, was what we call influenza. Schools were closed Washington's birthday and also the J.V. Fletcher Library. The RFD, or Rural Free Delivery Carriers, also enjoyed the holiday. As the weather and traveling were bad, the holiday must have been doubly welcome to these last mentioned. Miss Eva E. Fletcher, having reached a quiescent stage from her recent severe attack of appendicitis, was taken to the Lowell General Hospital this week and underwent an operation Wednesday. The operation was performed by Dr. C.R. Metcalf of the Massachusetts General Hospital and Dr. Orion V. Wells, he's a Westford doctor, and is apparently successful. Her many friends sincerely sympathize with her and her suffering and earnestly wish her a speedy recovery. The next paragraph is called Accident. Leslie Devereaux, who was a weekend guest of Alexander Cameron, met with an unfortunate accident last Saturday afternoon. While coasting down a steep hill below the house, the Cameron house was at 7 Graniteville Road, with a double runner, they collided with a tree, and the Devereaux boy's leg was broken below the knee. The boys were classmates together at the Middlesex School for Boys at Concord. Dr. Wells and the school physician from Concord, Dr. Chamberlain, attended to the boy's injuries. His home is in Utica, New York. The next section is called Has Accepted the Call. The Reverend David Wallace preached again, most acceptably, to a large congregation last Sunday morning. At the close of the service, there was a business meeting of the church members, and there seemed to be a unanimous wish to extend to Mr. Wallace a call to become the pastor of the church. Of 29 written ballots cast, 28 were affirmative. Mr. Wallace has accepted the call extended to begin work at once. He comes to his church with a record of successful pastorates, and the committee feel that they have secured a man suited to the needs of the parish. The following is the letter of acceptance, and it's dated February 21st, 1910, and it's directed to Mr. Leonard Wheeler, who was chairman of the Supply Committee. Your letter at hand notifying me of the Union Congregational Church Westford and calling me to the pastorate. I accept the call, and in accordance with my understanding with you as to the wishes of the people, I propose to begin my pastoral work with you next Sunday morning, February 27th. Believing that the great head of the church has brought us together, and trusting and praying that his richest blessing may attend us in all the work and through all the days that we may be privileged to enjoy together, and wishing you all grace, mercy, and peace, I am sincerely yours, David Wallace. Mr. Wallace has a special message for his congregation next Sunday morning, and especially and earnestly desires all to be present who can possibly do so. At this writing, the freshly renovated parsonage is ready for occupancy, and the new pastor's household goods are expected to arrive Thursday or Friday. The renovations have been most capably and attractively done with additional assistance of willing parishioners. The new family circle consists of the pastor, his wife, and 2 daughters, Pauline and Rachel. Interesting, they don't give the wife's name, but they give the 2 daughters' names. Forge Village is the next session. The Mrs. Ellen and Annie Holden held a reception at their home on Pond Street Saturday evening, and a large number of their friends were present. The evening was pleasantly spent in vocal and instrumental music. A large number from here attended the play The Dictator, which was given by the boys of Groton School in the Town Hall, Groton, Wednesday evening. J.A. Healy of Graniteville conveyed some of the members in his large 3-seated sleigh. R.D. Prescott was the driver. The Dictator, a play in 3 acts, was written by Richard Harding Davis and published in New York City by Charles Scribner's Sons in 1906 and then again in 1909. Miss Mary Cherry is recovering from an attack of the grip. Eugene Cote, who underwent an operation at the Lowell General Hospital several weeks ago, is in a critical condition as a result of blood poisoning. Loyal Self-Help Lodge, IOOF, that's the Oddfellows Lodge, held a very interesting meeting in Abbott Hall on Monday evening. A large number was in attendance. After the lodge business was completed, a short entertainment was given. Piano solo, John Shackleton. Harmonica duet, Charles Eaton and John Baker. Recitation, Charles Thompson. Song and dance, John Baker. Songs, William DeRone, Harry White, John Shackleton, and Charles Flanagan. Graniteville is the next section. The regular meeting of St. Catherine's Temperance Society was held in its rooms on Wednesday. Business of importance was transacted, and reports of committees acted upon. A whist party is one of the features promised for the future. Ernest Longbottom, a former resident but now located in Arlington Heights, has been a recent visitor of this village. The next section is called Birthday Anniversary. A very pleasant event took place at the home of Mr. and Mrs. William White in this village on Sunday. The occasion being the 75th birthday anniversary of William White. An excellent dinner was served by Mrs. White, and seated about the festive board were members of the immediate family, including Mr. and Mrs. C.H. Wright and Miss Edith Wright of Westford, Mr. and Mrs. Frank Edwards of West Chelmsford, Henry White, and little son, Master Norman White of Beverly. Mr. White received many happy returns of the day and was presented with an elegant Morris chair of the latest pattern by the members of the family. Mr. White is a well-preserved man for his years, enjoys good health, and works every day. The presentation of the chair was a happy thought of his children, for, as he remarked, quote, "It was just what I wanted," end quote, and he can now enjoy his evening paper and books while comfortably seated before the glowing fire. The Morris chair mentioned here was an early reclining chair first designed and sold in 1866 by the firm Morris & Company. It featured an upholstered seat and reclining back that was hinged and supported by pegs so that the reclining angle could be adjusted by moving the pegs in a row of holes in each arm. It sounds like you had to get out of the chair in order to set the back, but it was a reclining chair. The next service section is called Church Services. At the Methodist Church last Sunday, the pastor preached from the topic, The Mission of the Church. For the evening, the theme was Where the Soul Lives. A chorus of 12 or more has been organized and will render special music at the evening hour. The pastor met all the men of the church in the vestry on Saturday evening, and an informal hour was spent. Refreshments were served. Many attended the Lenten service in St. Catherine's Church on Wednesday evening, which included the Stations of the Cross, followed by the benediction of the Blessed Sacrament that were conducted by Reverend J.J. McNamara. Father McNamara gave a brief sermon appropriate to the Lenten season. Lenten devotions were to be held on Tuesday evening, but owing to the severity of the storm, they were held on Wednesday evening instead. After the 9:45 o'clock Mass that was celebrated in St. Catherine's Church on Sunday morning by Reverend J.J. McNamara, a short meeting was held by the parishioners for the purpose of forming plans for the coming entertainment to begin in aid of the church. And that's the news in Westford for the work ending February 26, 1910. Thank you for listening, and thanks to Ryan Cousins of WestfordCAT for providing technical support. You can find transcriptions and podcasts from the Wardsman at our website at museum.westford.org or visit the Historical Society's Facebook page for more Westford news from a century ago. This is Bob Oliphant, and I hope you will join us for next week's Westford Wardsman podcast. Thank you.